I was born on the 23rd of May, 1963. So this picture would have been taken right about the time of my first Christmas. We lived in a town called Capay, California, from the time I was born until I was 8 years old. It was an absolutely fantastic place to live. It was in the middle of an orchard with almond trees and cherry trees, and we had a lemon tree and we had multiple orange trees. It was truly an amazing place to live. I would have loved to have lived there until I was out of school and on my own, but it was not meant to be. You see, my father worked at a place that pumped water from the Sacramento River into irrigation canals for the local orchards and fields in the area where we lived. And in 1968, there was absolutely devastating flooding in California along the Sacramento River. Well, basically all the rivers that flowed out of the mountains. And it took them subsequent years to repair all of the damage. Well, the place that my father worked was run by the county, and he didn't make an overabundance of money. And they brought in a hard hat diver to go down and repair the fish screens that kept the fish from ending up in the pumps where he worked. And the diver got $100 a day. I can vividly remember my father coming home from work for lunch or at the end of the day and talking about the hard hat diver that got $100 a day. And that was the total talk where he worked from that time on until finally they had a vote and they decided that they were going to unionize. And my father ended up going in the electrical workers union. And when he was eligible to join that, he could also travel and work the big construction jobs where you could make absolutely incredible money. And I was condemned to live a life of changing schools at least once every year until I was grown. The houses that were along this section of channel that was cut that brought irrigation water from the Sacramento River, the houses are long since gone. They've been torn down, and the area is just mixed orchards now of almonds and oranges and olives, and it has basically just returned to agricultural use. There was 4 or 5 houses that the workers for the pumping station lived at, and those days are long gone. It's all automated equipment now. This is from when I was 4 years old. In the backyard of that house, my parents were attempting to grow a garden. I don't think very much came of it, because as you can see, it's mostly weeds, and they really weren't gardeners too awful much. But you can see a quite wonderful citrus tree in the background. I distinctly remember picking oranges and lemons. My mother planted a little lemon tree in the backyard, and she got about 2 or 3 lemons off of it a year. And here would be Christmas pictures from about that time in my life. Yes, if a person could only go back. And this would be Christmas 1967, I believe, at the Disco department store in Chico, California. And believe it or not, I remember this picture being taken. Disco obviously came along before there was a genre of music named after it. It was a discount chain of department stores. I don't think they survived very long. The Disco store is still in Chico. It's been heavily remodeled, and I'll show you what it looks like now. It is now the Chico Sports Club in Chico, California. And now, of course, it is heavily modified. It was just a rundown little department store. But I have very fond memories of going there as a child. The next place we lived was Goldendale, Washington, and this was my 9th, I believe, birthday. I still remember what some of these kids' names were. That's me on the right, and then Jeff Rice and J.D. Stearns and Frank Lamb and David Larson. The girl is Sue Edison in the Stripes, and the rest of them I don't remember. This would be Christmas of the same year in Goldendale, Washington. The girl on the right is Ida, which was my sister's husband's little sister. And this was probably one of the best Christmases of my life because it was the first time I ever saw snow, and I got a train that I absolutely loved. And here is the train, and I absolutely loved it. But it probably wasn't the most practical gift for people that moved around as much as we did, because I don't remember the train being around very long. Life is really kind of an amazing process. You're born, you grow up, you go through the trials and tribulations of life, and it's just interesting how you start out knowing nothing and unable to take care of yourself, and you just kind of start out from nothing and go. I always thought that when you grew up, stuff would make sense. I always thought that you'd be able to look back and say, well, I didn't understand that then, but I do now. And it just hasn't worked out that way. If anything, less makes sense in the world on an ongoing basis. I spend more time trying to figure things out than what I understand. Maybe it was just arrogance on my part, but it seems like in my youth stuff made more sense than it does now, or perhaps a person just didn't spend that much time thinking about things. I don't know. A picnic in the fall at Bidwell Park in Chico, California, which is also where they filmed the epic Robin Hood movie with Errol Flynn in the 1930s. Eventually, we were living in Tri-Cities, Washington, which is 3 towns very close together, Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland, where they were building 2 nuclear plants. The local Chamber of Commerce was giving away little booklets. They would come and knock on your door, and they had a welcoming pack. And one of the things that was in the basket was a bunch of coupons for local businesses. One of the coupons was for a free portrait, and she decided she wanted me to go down and have this portrait done. Well, the jacket is actually made by her, and she also made the pants, but they were never finished. And it's really kind of a sad story, because what happened was she decided that she was going to make the stuff for me for the portrait. Well, time ticked away, and she didn't have it done by the time that I was supposed to go down and have the portrait done. So she stuck a bunch of pins in it and just held it all together for me to go down and get the portrait done. Well, when I came back from the portrait, which there's another funny story about that, we moved a short time after the portrait was done, and the jacket and the pants got put in a box and kind of disappeared. Well, by the time she went looking for them and dug them out and finally finished all the hems and all the stuff that she needed to finish them, they were actually too small for me to wear. And the other funny story associated with the day that this portrait was taken was after we went and had the portrait done, on our way home from the studio, she decided that she wanted to stop and get an ice cream cone at this little local stand. And I ran inside and got the ice cream. Well, when I came out, I told her, I said, that girl working in that ice cream stand was just flirting with me. And she looked at me and she said, oh, some girls will just flirt with anybody. What she was trying to say was not to put too much stock in it, to just go on that these things happen and everything. She was not a cruel person. She was not trying to be mean or anything, but I was devastated. Really was a crushing blow to me. But she wasn't a mean person. She didn't mean it that way. It's just she said it without thinking. Time marches on. What is that old saying about time and tide waits for no man? And here I am, about 18, I believe, 17 or 18, at Christmas time, and we were living in Seaside, Oregon. And here we are in the first week of June 1982, and high school graduation. And the girl seated behind my hand clasping the diploma was later my wife. We have come full circle, and we end up back in the little town of Capay, California, circa 1967. Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas, Dave the Wandering Ponderer. Merry Christmas, Nigel Sadler and family. Merry Christmas, everyone, and thank you to everyone who has supported my meager efforts, and I wish everyone a prosperous and joyous New Year. Think good thoughts, do good deeds, and I will see you again in the next year. Bye, everyone.